Hey you, it's True with a new tier list for Evertale Arena 2025, and we've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's check out the newest additions straight away. Up first is Murasaki. This part-time guard can be very annoying to deal with and also works somewhat well at just one copy, though a full awakening of course is preferred because she can get the turn much more easily. Whenever she dies or self-sacrifices while in Guardian mode, she will revive straight away and lower the time units on all her allies, and that can be very powerful for sure. Then again, as many other Earth units, she is very weak against against burn units, and she is not meta changing. She is going to the S tier for now. The next water unit, on the other hand, is quite good against burn. Mermaid brings the first ever skill that actually is able to override the mega healing burn. With her pacifying wave, she also places burn wards on enemies, which is a bit of a nerf to Lucifer's passive. Then again, she is still very vulnerable to stun, so that is the one way to pretty easily defeat her if she gets stunned very highly. Because as long as she keeps getting turns and refreshes the coral barrier, which not only reduces damage to her teammates and herself, but also keeps her alive, she is quite difficult to defeat. She also comes with an execute skill and some super Mori production, so definitely a must-have for any water sleep team right now. She is going to the SS tier, although just barely, to be fair. Soon after, we got another sleep release, this one of the cursed variety. Earth Sun Wukong or Bright Sun Wukong brings a lot of cloning to the battlefield again. This one more on the passive side. It's very easy for her cloning to get out of hand and also her getting turns, because she can get a lot of them all the time with her charge mechanic that also provides her with the cloning abilities. She doesn't jive so well with other conjured units because she kind of needs non-conjured units around to keep cloning. Then again, even if she gets kills against non-conjured units, she will conjure some of herself if she has a charge available. Things like one-shot executing her, things like mega poison, and of course especially burn are things to deal with her. Of course, the recently released Satan is a strong counter. But all in all, this unit can be decisive in any battle, potentially turning the tide for you later on. She's also valuable at lower power, and she goes to SS tier. Afterwards, we got another cloning unit, or rather a conjuring unit in Goemon. This dark unit gave us a little bit of a break though, because while there are certain cases where she can be good, she just feels too clunky overall, despite on paper sounding very powerful with the ability to conjure 7 thieves straight away. They are ephemeral, they are very squishy, and she is also restricted in how she can replenish them. Another problem is that she kind of needs to be in the front or at the very last position in the arena to actually be able to use her cloning skill. This is why, despite having some interesting stealth support mechanics, she is going straight to the B tier only. The same thing certainly cannot be said for her elemental counterpart Kojiro. This unit needs a bit to get going, needs to get that first, maybe that second kill, but then she can be the biggest steamroller in the entire game right now. All the while featuring a very, very strong survivability skill set that gives her a very high armor, constantly gives her the counter stance when damaged, meaning that status effects are also not necessarily a very reliable counter to her, especially sleep struggling to take her out. Her big feature, of course, is the Sakura Storm that is an execute all skill. Now at first, this doesn't deal too much damage and also has a base cost of 100 time units, which is relatively high. But once she has 1, 2, 3 kills, her time units get extremely low and also Sakura Storm becomes more powerful. So that is why she's such a crazy steamroller. Once she gets the few kills that she needs, and then every 25 time units she can dish out a super high damage dealing execute all skill, which will give the opposing team barely any time to breathe. So very deservedly, she is going straight to the SSS tier. Definitely one of the very best units right now. Soon after we got yet another light unit that is also looking quite strong. DaVinci is kind of a sleep unit, but pretty much universally usable. She has the 2 with 1 stone execute mechanic, which is kind of new. Her ability to instantly heal her entire team, get the turn multiple times, unlock executes on next turns. So that on its own already sounds quite nice, but then you additionally on top of that also unlock immunities depending on which enemies you kill. So she can gain sleep immunity, poison immunity, burn immunity, and unlock wards of the same kind for her teammates if she kills enemies. A lot of things to like about her. She is going to the SS tier. Then we got Satan, yet another burn edition, who has a give turn mechanic, a way to strongly counter conjured units, both on her own and the enemy team. And once she gets her first kill, she becomes a very powerful executor. Definitely a top 3 burn unit in my eyes. She goes to the S tier for now. And finally we got yet another burn fire unit in Shenlong. This one being more about constantly going in and out of the battlefield potentially. However, she is a unit that feels a bit clunky for arena. The mores that she spawns coming in at the very end of allied reinforcements means that she cannot take advantage of that as much, except towards the end of a battle or possibly in a war battle. Still a good burn addition regardless. I would probably rank her at number 4 or number 5 for burn teams right now, and she is going to the A tier. With all the new releases out of the way, let's go through the tier changes from bottom to top as usual. We have a drop from D to E tier for Earth Ossia. She was one of the first units combining kind of poison and sleep in one skill set, although she was definitely more geared towards poison. And high up we also get some demotions, some of which are actually some quite new units. In Genie and Okita, for example, the RNGenie, as I like to call her because of all the RNG in her skill set, is a bit too much, too RNG dependent, while not offering anything game breaking. The only time I think I found her to be good is if she has a huge fellowship advantage. So if you are a whale trying to smack around some F2Ps, then Genie can be the way to go because of her super high healing whenever she gets hit. Then again, even with high fellowships, there's just better teams to build without Genie. The same is true for Okita, who kind of brought the vibe of the previously dominant Earth Musha. With previously dominant, of course, I'm referring to a few years ago. Okita brings an upgraded Stealthy Vengeance, but other than that, she really doesn't bring much to the table at all. Very low survivability, so that is why she also drops to D tier. Some older units follow suit. In Loki, the first ever Hypnosis unit in the game, Fire Elmina with her burn stun entry no longer super relevant, given how far burn units have come since her release. And in a similar vein, Water Alice is just kind of outdated for sleep teams at this point. Sometimes she still gets to summon her Morphe and he gets to set a force field up, basically making him a indestructible guard for some time. Then again, we have so many executes flying around right now that even that is no longer reason enough to keep Water Alice in your lineup. Similar thing is true for a prior number 1 unit in Stormgene. She goes down from B to C tier. She was pretty much in every single top arena platoon for pretty much half a year after her release. But that was also before the first ever execute skills got released. It has been a while now since Stormgene reigned supreme But to be fair, she is still at 32.3% usage, so every third top team is still using her. That is the highest usage in the C tier, a tier that is also joined by 2 other storm units in Gigarolosha and Himiko. Himiko, the unit that gets turns whenever she attacks enemies with 100% HP. Also some strong team support in her skill set. The same is true for Gigarolosha, who not only comes with a very strong stun entry, but with a passive Team Purify as well. However, Gigarolosha, of course, the slowest unit in the entire game with just 1 speed, and stun immunities and stun wards are just becoming too widespread to really have her have a massive impact, especially given her low survivability. It is not rare to see her not even get 1 turn, and even if she gets that turn, her damage output isn't actually all that crazy. Yeah, not much more to say about that. We also have 2 Earth units drop to the C tier, and that is Sleeping Beauty and Bright Reset. Sleeping Beauty, the first ever unit that introduced Thorns to the battlefield, which kind of broke the stealth meta in hindsight when she was released. She was also the very first Earth unit that really outright sucked against burn, so that was kind of introducing a new trend back then. But outside of burn, of course, she dominated for quite a long time. I would say her spiritual successor is probably the new Dark Earth Goemon. Gawain. No, I don't know if any Earth Goemon is coming. Given the reception of the first Goemon, I would actually be surprised if Sixer ever releases a second one. Bright Reset really brought together the kind of sleep and poison skill set and also introduced that toxic sleep, which we haven't seen much of since. Honestly, that kind of passive could very well be broken sometimes. But yeah, the Purify going around, the wards, and also more strong burn units being released don't do any favors to this unit. Man, I really am talking way too much about these lower tier units. I went into this wanting to keep this short, but somehow I'm failing yet again. I hope you still enjoy me talking about some of these older units. We are getting closer to the present though. We are going to the B tier, where we have a very current unit in Goemon already waiting for some other units to join her, one of which is Rapunzel, this kind of light unit that is kind of sleep, but not really, more like after sleep. Is a very good supporter, but yeah, at this point also somewhat outdated. Fire Kaguya is also dropping quite a bit, and Gilgamesh is going with her as well. Both of these burn units still somewhat decent in certain scenarios, I think, but just now outclassed by the recent burn releases, which is especially problematic, I guess, for Kaguya, who has been around for a much shorter period than Gilgamesh. Yeah, she never really gained that kind of momentum, though she can be kind of hard to kill. And then we have the first blood unit in ages, Excalibur, also dropping to the B tier. This Dark SSR has good value even at 1 copy, I find, but her own survivability and damage output isn't too crazy. So 5 drops to the B tier should be accompanied by 5 drops from the A tier, right? And one of them is a heavy dropper in Dark Cleopatra, specifically the Dark Element, not Earth Dark Cleopatra. This prior top 3 unit can still sometimes turn the battle around with the Dusk Mirage. Then again, the meta is starting to move a little bit fast for her, and she not always gets to set up. Then there's also some compatibility issues with some other Dark top units in Cthulhu and Dark Lancelot, for example, who tend to take out her imposters, which are her lifeline. Then we have the Thunder Guard Bright Lancelot drop as well. When we are just speaking about Lancelot, this second iteration is going down. Guards are having it kind of difficult right now, and there's so much mega poison flying around, which is lethal for Bright Lancelot. Of course, she also has to worry about all these kinds of execute skills flying around, and then there's also the problem that her non-skin stun skin is made pretty much irrelevant by all the kinds of get-turn mechanics that are flying around right now. Besides all the stun wards, of course. Percival, the light unit, is also going down, and I think in some sense DaVinci is already her successor, Percival always used to do some crazy shit based on the elements of her opponents, although Percival more geared towards stun than sleep for sure, also coming with some healing capabilities for your own team. But her survival skill is locked for 200 time units. She has a very good execute skill in the Royal Void, but the long time between turns, sometimes multiple turns admittedly, but the 100 time units in between then are a bit of a problem for this Percival. Dark Cinderella is also joining Percival in the A tier, which is kind of crazy because she is still at 64.7% usage, but all that usage is basically coming from later platoons towards the end of a battle. Sometimes, or most of the times, she will not play a decisive role, but sometimes she is just the unit your team needs to turn around the battle, because if she gets the turn with some execute active on the demolition rate and stuff like that, she can take 2 top meta units out like it's nothing. Then again, she's extremely vulnerable to sleep. She's also slow, and so the kind of setup also depends a little bit on her RNG, hopefully getting some multiple turns with her blasts to get the kills she wants. And another light unit dropping is actually Mordred, so this burn unit possibly down a little bit, also with the replacement effect from Satan, although she is still very nice to have. She has that kind of give turn to all the burning units, which is nice. She also has the kind of get turn mechanic that is also good, and she is also usable to some degree outside of burn teams, but all that isn't enough to stay in the S tier. She is also going to the A tier. In the S tier we also see some drops though, and one of which is a former #1 dominating unit of the last year, Water Anya. She brought the power barrier, the kind of mechanic that made her really annoying to kill. A skill in the Aegis Overload that was the most powerful skill in the entire game for many months. And of course the elemental circuit, which makes it so that all of the entering units get an entering effect. She's still usable, and she is still used by 2/3 of the 1000 top teams that my data looks at, but her impact on battle outcomes is becoming much lower, and her survivability is suffering from recent releases. The same is true for another powerful support unit, Unicorn. She is going to the S tier with 58% usage, and this unit was always just about her passives, stunning enemies on their entry, armoring up her teammates. There again to point out the kind of synergies with Dark Sun Wukong. And so those two together are both in the S tier now, but under the right circumstances can still be quite the force to be reckoned with. What is kind of interesting about Unicorn, I find, is that she is being actively nerfed, or rather the Unicorn Dark Sun Wukong combo is actively nerfed by developers, because they basically put a target on her back on many of the new releases if both Unicorn and Dark Sun Wukong are on the battlefield together, for the AI to prioritize taking out Unicorn, which means that the Dark Sun Wukongs cannot replenish as easily with the armor effect on entry, giving them basically the immediate possibility to duplicate. So that might be part of the reason why she's joining the S tier, but so is Earth Cleopatra as well, a unit that is extremely strong if she's not running into burn. Then again, she's not as strong as somebody like Earth Gawain. She kind of needs kills to get her cycle going with the fumes and her attack all skill, but especially against armor ignoring units, she is dead very quickly. And sometimes when she gets turned, she just can't do much at all, except maybe remove some stealth shield on an opponent or some ward. And finally, looking at the top tiers, we have 2 former #1 units going to the SS tier. It is none other than Musashi and Storm King Arthur. Both of them are no longer in the SSS tier in my tier list after being there for many months. Now the power creep is catching up to them. Both of them can still be super powerful, don't get me wrong, that's why they are in the SS tier still. But for Storm King Arthur, for example, it is getting increasingly difficult to put her in the Platoon 1 spot, in the starter spot where she thrives. She is still one of the speediest units in the game, but the Regal Barrage that was so strong when she came out now sometimes helps the opponents, if you think about units like Earth, Sun Wukong. And yeah, if you don't run her in front, then she loses half of her passive skill set because the King's Dawn is gone. With the lower time units of newer units, it also becomes increasingly difficult for her passive stun to trigger, given that most of the enemies will be under 50 time units most of the time. Unlike other units nowadays, she also doesn't have a get turn mechanic. Many of the same things are true for Musashi. Of course, Musashi can be a little bit happy that Storm King Arthur is going down, because Storm King Arthur is a main counter against her, especially in the starting platoons. But nevertheless, Musashi is kind of dropping from starting platoons as well. The guardless meta that has kind of established itself over the last months, ever since Avatar Ludmilla was released, is not good for Musashi. Her guard pushback doesn't do anything when she gets the first turn if there are no guards around. Her Glacial Slash is struggling against all the armored up units that are possibly additionally supported by some barrier. All that being said, I don't want to sound too negative on these two units. They both still feature very strong execute skills, but given that they were so dominant for such a long time, it is no wonder that many of the newer units are trying to actively counter both of them, making it harder for both of them to achieve their objectives in killing enemies. Two units, however, remain in the SSS tier. Besides the new joining Kojiro, we have Dark Lancelot and Dark Cthulhu. Cthulhu, interestingly, still by far the #1 unit, despite not having any execute in her skillset, but the give turn or the get turn mechanic with the Purify, her kind of healing from the charges, and of course nowadays something that gets even more and more important is her guarding, because the 90% armor while she is guarding is something that isn't to be underestimated. A lot of execute skills are still not ignoring armor, and so she is, I think, part of the puzzle piece in the guardless meta, because she often quickly assumes the role of a guard that is very difficult for enemy teams to take out. And during that guarding, of course, she's also hypnotizing the enemy, still mega poisoning, and yeah, just overall a really strong package, still even half a year after her release. Dark Lancelot has some very nice synergies with her. Her stun, super poison and counter skin is ignored sometimes, but yeah, she has the high hate, she has the good abilities to heal and the ability to transform mega poison into lethal poison. Also a stun side to her skill set that is not to be underestimated. Definitely the strongest poison stun character so far, outclassing somebody like Storm Snow White. Then again, I think the two recent light units in Kojiro and DaVinci are both a bit of a headache for Dark Lancelot and even Cthulhu as well. So let's see how things develop from here. But that's it for now. Here is, after all these changes, the updated tier list for Evertale Arena, based on 1000 top teams from around the world, from Japan, from the rest of Asia, from Europe, from the Americas. All the top champions arena clusters are being considered, with my new True Up 2.0 methodology, which also accounts for legacy effects on units now. Collecting and analyzing all the data and putting together this video takes well over 10 hours for me, so I would really appreciate your quick support by a click on the like button. Subscribe for more Evertale content and also to become a true carrot. Good luck with your pulls on top tier units. And as always, thanks for watching.